Hey guys, tonight we slip into a tale far off the radar of most textbooks, hidden in a place where clocks never ticked, but the river always knew the time. You're walking now, barefoot, the soil underfoot soft and warm like sponge cake left out in the sun. The path curves downward, lined with brush and wide-leaved trees whose shadows sway like slow dancers. And just ahead, you see it, the river, not roaring, not rushing, just whispering. You kneel by its edge. The air smells like warm bark and distant citrus. The water is low tonight, lapping lazily at the clay banks. You lean in because that's what they did. The people of this lost African kingdom, they didn't just watch the river, they listened. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? And what time is it there? Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You cup your hand near the water. It's making a sound, not a trickling, not a gurgle. It's closer to a sigh, gentle and rhythmic, like someone asleep. A few feet away, an elder squats by the same bank, her shawl brushing the reeds. She doesn't look at you. She's focused, listening. Then she nods to herself and stands, dusts her knees, and walks off toward the village. You follow. She didn't use a clock. She didn't glance at the sun. She heard something in that river, something that told her it's time. This kingdom didn't write their hours in ink or carve them into bronze discs. They didn't ring bells or chime gongs. No sundials, no pendulums. Their clocks were liquid and alive. Historians still argue whether this practice was invented deliberately or whether it evolved slowly from fishing patterns, tribal myths, and the uncanny accuracy of watery intuition. But one thing's clear, for hundreds of years, this river was more than just a source of food or transportation. It was the heartbeat of the kingdom. The locals believed the river had moods, some generous, others grumpy, at sunrise. If the river mumbled low and steady, merchants could open shop, but if it hissed or popped, the elders might cancel market day. Because obviously, how can you trust prices when the river's in a bad mood? You laugh a little, but the logic is almost poetic. After all, who hasn't made decisions based on a gut feeling? These folks just happened to outsource their gut to a body of water. You reach the edge of the village, if you can call it that. The homes are circular, thatched, low to the ground, with wooden stilts that creak when you step too close. Smoke drifts from one hut's roof hole, carrying the smell of roasted yam and something unfamiliar spiced insect. Maybe you spot a group of children by a tree stump, tapping on its surface like it's a drum, not playing music. Exactly. It's more like a ritual. Every tap is deliberate. One child pauses, ear tilted to the distance, then resumes tapping. Slower now. They're syncing with something, probably the river. You sit beside them, half curious, half sleepy, and a little skeptical. But just as your eyelids lower, the rhythm shifts again, and in the hush that follows, you hear it? The river's whisper. Again, it's soft but distinct, not random, measured. The most curious thing, this technique wasn't just child's play. It was used to settle disputes, arrange marriages, and declare planting seasons. The river dictated everything. You didn't propose without first consulting its tone. If it whispered with a high pitch, that was approval. A gurgle that sounded like laughter. Reconsider. If it went completely silent, you better fast for 3 days and try again. One French explorer, whose faded journals were discovered in a termite-eaten chest in the 1890s, described his confusion when no one in the village could tell him what day it was. But when asked whether it was the right moment to travel north, a boy leaned down to the riverbank, listened, smiled faintly, and said, "Tomorrow at dawn, she'll let you pass." Was the river really that predictable? Or was it the people who had become so attuned to its rhythms that they could divine the future from its murmurs? Historians still debate the point, but either way, it worked. Crops were harvested in harmony with the soil's mood. Wars were avoided when the river screamed in protest. Babies were named after the hour the river first acknowledged them, with a ripple, a swirl, or even a sudden splash. You glance back toward the water. It's darker now, reflecting a sheet of stars that look like they've just been gently dropped from the sky. The elder you saw earlier is back. She's alone, standing still, head bowed, a prayer, a question, maybe both. Then, without a word, she drops a small object into the water. It looks like a seed wrapped in cloth. It floats for a moment, then sinks. This is how they mark endings or beginnings. Time here is not measured by numbers. It's marked by sound, by feeling, and by faith. And in this kingdom long forgotten by maps, but still alive in memory, you don't keep time. Time keeps you. You wake. Or maybe you never fully slept, with your cheek resting on warm, packed earth, and the whisper of the river still curling through your ears like a secret you almost understood. The stars have dimmed just slightly, a haze spreading across the eastern horizon. The village is quiet, except for a single hum, not a voice, not a bird, just a low, rhythmic coming from the direction of the river. You follow it. There's no real path, just suggestions of one, bent grasses, soft footprints, and the occasional glint of a broken potsherd catching the dawn. When you reach the river again, it's changed. The water is silver now, not black, and on its surface, a glowing crescent floats not the moon in the sky, but its reflection, rippling and bobbing as if dancing on a drumhead. This is the moon clock. You crouch beside a girl no older than 12, her fingers resting lightly on the surface of the water. She doesn't flinch as you sit. She's counting, silently, every time the moon's reflection bounces just far enough to touch the tip of a submerged reed. 1, 2, 3. Then a pause, a breath. Then again, she whispers without looking at you. When it touches the reed 7 times, the elders wake. You blink, and if it's cloudy, she finally looks at you, shrugs. Then we wait. This is the kingdom's answer to your smartphone alarm clock. No digital displays, no snooze button, just moonlight on water and reeds placed with precision. The elders used to adjust those reeds every few months, accounting for riverbank erosion and the moon's changing path, like sacred maintenance work on a lunar metronome. Mainstream history doesn't remember this. You won't find reed calibration specialists in the Oxford Encyclopedia of Timekeeping, but oral accounts preserved by griots, those roaming storytellers of the region, insist it was real, reliable, even, especially before the rainy season, when cloud cover made every beam of moonlight sacred and rare. And the truly odd part, this wasn't superstition. It was math. Astronomers today, with their fancy software and dome-shaped observatories, confirm that certain moonlight angles on tropical rivers recur with uncanny precision, provided the river stays calm and that the reeds are still standing. But of course, no story worth dreaming over is ever that simple, because there were nights when the moon failed to appear, not due to clouds, but because the river refused her. It sounds absurd, but that's how the people explained it. The river won't let her through, they'd say, and that meant something had gone wrong. Somewhere in the kingdom, a marriage was breaking, or a child had lied, or a spirit had not been properly thanked for its help during harvest. Time would stutter, events would delay. You might propose to someone on a moonless river and be politely rejected, not because they didn't love you, but because the river hadn't given its blessing. Historians still argue whether this moon river timekeeping was practical, spiritual, or symbolic. One camp believes it was merely a calendar system entwined with lunar phases and agricultural patterns. Another claims it bordered on religion, where the river became a sentient being, a god or goddess whose moods were to be read, not measured. You dip your fingers into the water and feel the current soft, insistent, pushing ever so slightly westward. A few bubbles rise nearby, then vanish. Somewhere behind you, a rooster gives a hesitant crow. Like it's checking if anyone's listening. The moon touches the reed for the 7th time. And just as the girl predicted, the village begins to stir. A gentle rattle of wooden bowls. A yawn stretched into a song. A door flap creaks open, and a man with silver hair and sleep-puffed eyes steps into the morning with a hum. This is not punctuality as you know it. This is synchrony human lives, ebbing and flowing with a river's mood and a moon's light. A kind of harmony we modern folk have traded for wristwatches and wall calendars. You walk a bit upstream with the girl, She hums a song under her breath, something her grandmother taught her, a lullaby meant for water, not people. You have to hum it gently, she says, so the river doesn't think you're rushing her. Half joking, you ask what happens if the river does feel rushed. Her answer is simple. She floods. You glance around. The land here is flat, wide. A single flood would be enough to drown every hut within sight. You suddenly understand why patience is baked into their culture. When your primary source of time can also be your most devastating force, you learn to live with grace, slowly, quietly, as you walk back toward the village. The sun finally peeks over the tree line. The moon's reflection dissolves in the water like a drop of milk in tea. The time of moon watching is over. Now comes the time of listening. But that, as you'll soon learn, is a whole other kind of clock. You're seated now on a low stone ledge beside the river, its surface just inches below your feet. The breeze is warmer today, rustling the grasses with a sound that blends into the constant whispering of water. But there's something else here, something underneath the water line that catches your eye. Just below the rippling surface are stones, not random ones, carved ones, arranged in rows, shallow arcs, and spiral patterns. Their tops just barely poking through depending on how the water flows that day. You squint. The shapes aren't letters, not quite symbols either, more like quiet reminders. And as the river shifts with the breeze, each stone seems to speak softly, not with noise, but with rhythm. Wet, dry, submerged, exposed. The river's changing height creates a kind of visual language, a sentence written in moisture. You run a finger along the top of one stone, and it's warm, smooth in places, but chipped in others. Time has gnawed on it, like a lazy goat. You ask an elder who's watching you from under a raffia parasol, "What do these mean?" He smiles, toothless. "They tell us if we're early or late." Turns out, these stones weren't placed randomly, long ago. They were aligned with meticulous care by river watchers, kind of like a royal team of stonemasons, astronomers, and water priests all rolled into one. Each stone corresponded to a certain hour, not by name, but by visibility. If 6 of the stones were dry by mid-morning, all was well. If only 2 were visible, something was wrong, either with the flow, the rainfall, or the balance between the human world and whatever spirits lurked beneath the reeds. Historians still debate whether these stones functioned like a tidal calendar or more like a sacred abacus. Some believe the patterns were updated monthly. Others argue that, no, they were meant to endure centuries, and it was the people who adjusted their schedules to fit them. Either way, it's clear, this wasn't timekeeping as measurement. This was timekeeping as observation. Time wasn't something you set, it was something you watched. You lean closer, and just then, a ripple moves across the surface, distorting the reflections, and briefly submerging one of the drier stones. A child nearby sees it and nods solemnly. "It's late," he whispers, like a secret. "We have to wait another hour for market to open." You think he's joking until a few moments later, a line of basket carriers approaching from the village stops in unison. They sit, wait, no one complains. Because here, the river decides, in your world, lateness is a flaw, a sign of laziness or chaos. But here, lateness means listening. It means paying attention to subtle signs, the way a leaf skates across the surface, or how quickly a water beetle dashes between lily pads. The stone you touched earlier now catches more light. The sun's arc has shifted, and in doing so, has revealed new lines carved into its side, a swirl, an arrow, and what looks almost like a footprint. You ask about it. The elder tilts his head. That's the stone for meetings. It shows itself only when the river agrees to witness. It takes you a moment to process what that means. Meetings were only held when the river was calm and allowed certain stones to surface. In essence, the river wasn't just the timekeeper. It was the moderator. And if the stone stayed hidden, no meeting. He shrugs. No judgment. The river doesn't want to hear arguments today. A sly smile. You wonder how many couples use that excuse to delay in-laws or avoid awkward family negotiations. You begin to walk the stone trail yourself, now that you understand what you're seeing. It stretches for nearly 40 meters along the bank, always hugging the curve of the water like a spine. Each carved rock has a name not spoken, but sung. You hear a soft tune floating from an older woman across the way. Her voice dips and rises in cadence with the breeze. Her song not meant for people, but for the water. It's a memory of names. Each stone has its own personality, the sighing one, the stone that waits, the listener, the one that never dries, and so on. The song is a calendar, yes, but also a kind of prayer, a reaffirmation that time still flows. And of course, there were anomalies, years when the river changed course ever so slightly, revealing a stone too early, or burying it for months. In such times, the kingdom had to adapt. Some records scratched into wooden tablets stored in tree-hung baskets tell of years where harvests were delayed. Babies were born off schedule, and entire ceremonies were postponed indefinitely, waiting for one stubborn stone to reappear. Did the people ever try to move them? Never. That would be sacrilege. Time, after all, was meant to be slow, to resist, to tease. So you sit again, cross-legged now, with your hand in the water and your gaze on the stones. One by one, they emerge, then sink, then rise again. No alarms, no ticks. Just the ancient patience of stone and stream, whispering to anyone who remembers how to listen. The breeze has picked up now, brushing through the tall reeds like fingers parting soft hair. You find yourself walking beside a boy no older than 9, barefoot and gleaming with river mist, a small feather tucked behind one ear. He doesn't say much, but every so often he stops, raises a hand, and tilts his face into the wind as if it were speaking directly into his ear. His name, you eventually learn, is Keba, and he's a timekeeper not by blood, not by royal title, but by gift. You ask him what he's doing, and he gives you a look, usually reserved for the profoundly lost. I'm measuring time, he says simply, like you should have known by how the wind kisses. You blink. Kisses what? My face. Right. Obviously, Keba explains, in the slow, patient tone of someone used to teaching forgetful adults, that the river's time isn't just in water and light, it's also in air. The wind that dances across the river carries whispers. Some mornings it's cold and hasty, meaning chores must begin early. Other mornings, it's warm and sluggish, which means breakfast can wait. There are breezes that tell of coming rain, of fish spawning in deeper waters, even of distant visitors drawing close. And if the wind passes by without touching your skin at all, you're not meant to know the time today, Keba says with a grin. Historians still debate whether these so-called wind oracles had any actual system, or whether the entire practice was a glorified weather report passed through generations. But the elders insist, the wind knows things before we do, before the river floods, before the sun cracks a dry season open, before someone in the village gets sick. Keba continues his walk, now with his arms stretched slightly out from his sides. You imitate him, feeling foolish for the first few steps, until the wind does touch you. It brushes against your right ear, warm and low, then coils around your shoulders and slides past. Keba halts. Afternoon wind, he says. But it's morning. You look up. The sun is barely above the tree line. That means someone's been rushing, he mutters, mostly to himself. The wind's ahead of the day. There are stories, half history, half legend about how the kingdom once relied entirely on these wind readers. One tale tells of a year when all the river stones were washed away by a flood, and the moon couldn't find its reflection for months. Time stopped, or at least, the people didn't know how to move forward. That's when the wind keepers took over. They mapped time by direction, by speed, by scent. A cinnamon-sweet wind meant market day. A metallic one meant someone in the court was lying. And a wind that came from nowhere, with no breeze before or after. That was a warning. Once, Keba tells you, lowering his voice like he's telling a ghost story. A wind came from the east, but only for 1 minute. All the elders fell silent. Nobody cooked for 3 days. You ask why. They said the wind had nothing to say. That's worse than saying something bad. It's hard not to feel the weight of that. A silence so profound, it reshaped an entire village's rhythm. You glance up at the trees. The branches sway gently now, in a steady pattern, not random, not wild, measured. Keba guides you toward a cluster of flat stones arranged in a circle. Each one is etched with lines, not letters, but grooves worn into geometric shapes. This is where the wind keepers meet. Not every day, only when the wind carries too many voices at once. You sit among the stones and feel it again. The breeze brushing your ankles, the hairs on your arms rising ever so slightly. You notice a thin strip of cloth tied to a branch above, fluttering like a flag. Kiba nods toward it. We use those when the wind can't make up its mind. They tattle. The cloth dances to the right, then abruptly flattens, then sways left again. Inconsistent, nervous, and suddenly, everyone in the circle looks at one another. Change is coming, murmurs a windkeeper. A woman draped in a robe dyed with soot and hibiscus. The others nod. No one needs to say what kind. Change, like time, isn't always labeled. It's only felt. And in this kingdom, clocks don't tick. They brush your cheek, mess up your hair, and then vanish before you can prove they were ever there. You lie back against one of the stones, letting the wind wash over you now. It smells faintly of roasted cassava and the river's breath. Somewhere nearby, a bell made of shell and twine jingles softly, not struck by a hand, but by air. You smile. You don't know what time it is, but the wind does, and she'll tell you when you're ready. The sun's climbing now, soft and amber, casting long shadows that look like ink trails on the dusty ground. The village has awakened fully. People move between huts carrying baskets, bundles, and stories. But one group has gathered not around the market, not near the fire pits, but down by the muddy bend in the river. You follow? Naturally. You're used to clocks being silent here, but this time, the kingdom's about to show you something noisier, not louder, just stranger. At the center of the crowd is a figure draped in what looks like dried river reeds, and you blink crocodile skin. It's cracked and faded, stitched into the shape of a tunic, and faintly glistens in the sun like old lacquer. The figure isn't moving fast. Every step is ritual. Children part like curtains. Whispering, "The timekeeper is here." This isn't a metaphor. The figure holds a gourd, narrow-necked, its bottom plugged with clumps of green moss dripping slowly into a carved bowl. The moss is damp with river water, and the drips are steady plop, 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 one drop every few seconds, each metered, each sacred. This, you realize, is their version of an hourglass. But it's not made of sand. It's made of crocodile skin and river moss. You try not to stare, but let's face it, this is more mesmerizing than your wristwatch ever was. According to legend, long ago, the kingdom's best hunter caught a crocodile so old, its eyes had turned blue. The creature was known for appearing only during the eclipse, gliding silently, as if made from time itself. When it died, whether from a spear or of old age, no one agrees they didn't eat it. They turned it into a clock. Its belly, dried and preserved, formed the pouch that now holds the moss. The drip rate depends on moisture, gravity, and even humidity in the air. And here's the thing, somehow, it works. Each morning, the gourd is refilled from the same bend in the river. Not just any water will do. It must be drawn when the river is calm in spirit, which means no birds calling, no reeds swaying, no breeze. A minute of complete stillness. If even one leaf flutters, they wait. The wrong water, they say, could corrupt time for the whole day. You watch the drops fall into the bowl. As the bowl slowly fills, a wooden rod floats upward. When it hits a carved marking near the rim, about a hand's width above the lip, the market opens. When it hits the next mark, it's time for the midday meal. By the third mark, time for silence. The final mark, barely visible in the shadow of the bowl, means darkness is coming, and fires must be lit. Historians still argue whether this device originated from local ingenuity or was adapted from passing traders, possibly Arab or even Indian. Fragments of similar instruments have been found along ancient trade routes in Mali, Niger, even Sudan, but none quite like this. None made from a reptile whose name no one dares say out loud. The timekeeper shifts her position. She's old, but her movements are sharp, precise. She listens between the drops, humming softly a tone matched to the rhythm. If the plop speeds up, she frowns. If it slows, she nods. You ask why it matters. She looks at you like you've just asked, whether gravity matters. Because if it drips too fast, we hurry. If it's too slow, we forget. Forget what? To breathe. And you do. Right there. You exhale, realizing just how long you've been holding your breath, watching this curious ceremony unfold. Later, a man sidles up next to you, holding a bundle of plantain leaves and a curious sense of nostalgia in his eyes. He tells you that as a boy, he once tried to build his own drip clock using a gourd and cooked yam peels. Didn't work. He shrugs. Yam peels hold grudges. You chuckle. The drip into the bowl continues. A child runs to alert the spice sellers. The rod has hit the first notch. Market may now begin. You walk the perimeter, weaving past vendors, placing bowls of dried tamarind, woven bracelets, chunks of hardened honeycomb. But your attention keeps drifting back to that bowl and the soft, eternal rhythm of time, marked not by bells or buzzing phones, but by nature tamed just enough to be useful, wild enough to stay mysterious. By midday, the moss in the gourd will need changing. If it's too dry, the drips come too fast. If it's too soaked, nothing moves. There's always a delicate balance, a reminder that time here doesn't obey people. People obey time, or rather, they partner with it. That evening, you find a small child standing beside the now emptied bowl. Staring down at the moss remains like it holds secrets. You ask her what she sees. Dreams, she says, old ones, dripping away. And somehow, you believe her? It's early evening now. The sky is steeped in the deep gold that only seems to exist at the edge of sleep. You sit on a woven mat with your legs folded and your hands cupped around a wooden spoon carved into the shape of a fish. It smells faintly of wood smoke and citrus oil, which is somehow not the strangest part of this moment. What's strange is that you're about to taste the time. You glance around. Every villager, from toothless elders to sleepy-eyed toddlers, is seated in small clusters facing the river. Bowls of pale broth are passed hand to hand, each one filled from the same large clay pot simmering near the edge of the trees. It isn't a meal. Exactly. It's a reading. A ceremony known simply as salt and ash. The woman sitting beside you leans over with a kind smile. Her name is Amma. She's in her 70s, with arms still strong from decades of pounding yam and pulling fish nets. The river gives us her flavor, she whispers, and we use it to decide the day. You raise an eyebrow. Decide it. Isn't the day already happening? Amma chuckles. No, child. The morning decides what's possible, but the evening tells us if we understood it right. You lift the spoon to your lips. The taste is subtle, earthy, with a flick of salt and something smoky underneath. Not unpleasant, but surprising. Behind you, others are murmuring quietly to one another. A boy licks his spoon and declares, "It's an ash day." His father nods gravely. Then we wait to speak. Apparently, each day's broth tastes slightly different, depending on the mineral content of the river water used to make it. Some days are salt days, brighter, more energetic, ideal for planning journeys or planting seeds. Others are ash days for listening, caution, mending clothes, or reconsidering that argument you started at lunch. And then, there are clear days. No aftertaste, no weight. Those are rare. Clear days mean the river trusts us. Amma says, she's not hiding anything. You pause. And if it tastes like mud, Amma doesn't smile this time. Then no one sleeps near the river. Too many old ghosts stirring. Historians still puzzle over how such an elaborate sensory system came to be. Some theorize it started as a water testing ritual, meant to detect pollution or flooding. Others believe it's a holdover from medicinal traditions, where taste and body alignment were closely tied. But the villagers insist it's something else, something older than medicine, something deeper than culture. They call it palate divination. You ask if it's possible for two people to taste different things from the same bowl. Amma shrugs. Of course, the river doesn't whisper the same story to everyone. That might sound mystical. But consider this. Taste is subjective. One man's briny zest is another woman's burnt roots. And in a society where no clocks tick and no sundials turn, maybe that subjectivity is the point. Maybe the river isn't trying to measure time with this ritual. Maybe she's offering something more personal. Reflection. The bowl is passed again. This time, the flavor is sharper, with an edge of bitterness, that makes you blink. Amma nods as if expecting your reaction. It's an ending day, she says. We'll sleep early tonight. You glance toward the horizon, where the sun is melting into a purple-blue line just above the trees. The river has quieted too, her earlier whispers now hushed murmurs, almost like she's listening back. Across the clearing, a group of elders is placing stones in a wide circle. Not large ones, these are smooth and round, painted with faint traces of ochre and wrapped in vines. Each stone is a symbol, a day mark. One by one, they lay them in a spiral on the ground. Based on how the broth was received, it's a living calendar. Unlike your own rigid week of Monday through Sunday, their system flows. There are no Tuesdays here, only salt days, ash days, ending days, and so on 47 possible types of days in all, each with its own rituals, taboos, and ideal activities. You're told that the full spiral resets every season, based entirely on taste, not time. One year might have 5 salt days in a row. Another year might skip them entirely. The river decides. You watch as children gather the empty bowls, careful not to spill any drops. Even leftover broth is considered meaningful. Some of it will be offered back to the river, some mixed into soil near yam fields, and a small amount poured on the stones of ancestors buried under the tall mango trees. You ask if anyone has ever tried to cheat the broth, add flavors, control the reading. Amma sighs. Once, long ago, a chief added honey to sway the village into a clear day. His home flooded before sunrise. You set your spoon down quietly. The flavor still lingers on your tongue, earthy, bitter, maybe even a little metallic. You're not sure if that's the ash, the salt, or the knowing. But something tells you today was not for action. Today was for paying attention. And as the stars begin to unfurl across the sky, you can't help but wonder what kind of time you just tasted. Night settles like soft fabric over the village, wrapping every hut, tree, and breath in velvet hush. You lie on a mat near the river's bend, listening not for frogs, not for owls, but for something else entirely. A voice, not human, not language, a song. It's low, melodic, and sung in a language you don't recognize, gentle, vowel-heavy phrases carried by a woman whose silhouette is outlined in the moonlight. She stands at the river's edge, shawl brushing her ankles, a bowl in one hand and a small bell in the other. She sings to the water. Her name, whispered by a child nestled beside you, is Mbani. She's the oldest person in the village, or maybe just the one who remembers how to age in peace. Nobody really knows her true age. Some say she's lived through 3 floods. Others say she remembers when the moon slipped and had to be guided back by the cranes. Her job, if it can be called that, is to sing the night song of keeping. It's not for sleep. It's for holding the river in place so it doesn't wander in the dark. Mbani dips her fingers into the bowl and flicks droplets into the water. With each flick, her melody shifts slightly, minor notes rippling through the air. You feel them more than hear them, a kind of vibration in your ribs. This is the lullaby. A man murmurs behind you. If the river doesn't hear it, she forgets the way. You think it's poetic exaggeration until you notice the stillness. The water, which just an hour ago flowed steadily east, now seems quieter, not stopped, just calm, as if it, too, is listening. Historians still debate whether this tradition had anything to do with practical knowledge, maybe a method of calling to the river spirits, or a psychological cue for villagers to wind down. But villagers insist the lullaby holds power, that the river listens, that it needs to. In fact, there's a tale they tell the children, a time, many decades ago, when Mbani fell ill and missed 3 nights in a row. On the 4th morning, the river had changed course by only a few meters, but enough to drown the yam fields and wash away half the market. After that, no one questioned the song again. You sit with this knowledge, breathing in the scent of firewood and wild basil. The bowl in Mbani's hand isn't just water. It's filled with a special brew made from river clay, crushed blue petals, and the peel of a tree fruit that smells faintly of gingerbread. The mixture is said to taste like memory if sipped, but no one under 70 is allowed to drink it. Tonight, you just watch. As the song continues, something shifts around you, not loud, just different, The reeds stop moving. The insects pause. Even the frogs who've been staging a croaking opera for hours go silent. And in that hush, you hear it? A long, low gurgle not from the surface, but from deep beneath the water. It rolls upward like a breath held too long, then released. Mabani hears it too. She nods slightly, and her voice lowers to a murmur, then a hum, then silence. The lullaby has been accepted. You shiver not from cold, but from knowing you've just witnessed a dialogue older than most languages, not a metaphor, not a ritual done for tradition's sake, a real, living exchange between woman and river. You glance toward the trees, where other villagers begin lighting small fires in ceramic bowls, spirit lamps. They're called, each one placed beside a sleeping mat, facing the river, always facing the river. The lamps burn oil made from pressed nuts and herbs, mixed in secret ratios passed from mother to daughter. Why face them toward the water? So the river knows we trust her not to rise, whispers a nearby elder, gently lighting his own flame. You lie back, watching the lamps flicker. They don't cast much light, just enough to see the silhouettes of sleeping figures and the faint curl of smoke rising into the stars. The moon reflects on the river's surface, smoother now than it was all day, as if the lullaby polished it. But still, one question lingers. What happens if Mabani stops? What if the song is forgotten? You ask, and the answer is simple, too simple. Then someone else will remember it. A child says, already half asleep. She sings, so the river remembers us. But we remember her. There's no written score, no recording. The song is kept alive through breath, bone, and bedtime. You imagine mothers humming it while combing hair, elders weaving it into tales about fireflies that guide the moon. Even frogs might carry pieces of it in their night calls. If you know how to listen, and you do listen, as your eyelids grow heavier and the sound of the river grows lighter, you won't remember the melody exactly, but you'll remember the feeling of being heard by something bigger and softer. Morning arrives without announcement. No crowing rooster, no tolling bell. Just the river stretching herself awake with a ripple that tickles the reeds. You blink into the soft gray light and rub your eyes. The memory of Mabani's lullaby still lingering in your ears like a gentle echo. But something's off. You sit up slowly. The usual background chorus birds chirping. Market sounds warming up. Pots clanking into their daily rhythms isn't there. Not even the river is whispering. It's quiet. Too quiet. You look to the water, expecting her familiar murmur, the comfort of her conversation with wind and stone. But today, the surface is flat, silent, and still. No breeze. No hum. No fish breaking the surface. The river is mute. A few villagers have gathered already, crouched near the waterline, whispering to one another in tones that are neither panic nor peace, just confusion. Mabani is there too, staring at the water with eyes that suddenly seem far older than yesterday. You join her. Why isn't she speaking? You ask, almost afraid to break the silence. Mabani doesn't turn. She's thinking. The elders call this kind of day a hollow day, a rare moment when the river offers no sound, no guidance, no mood, nothing. It doesn't mean danger. It doesn't mean peace. It means absence. You wait with the villagers, expecting something, anything. A gust of wind, a frog's call, even a leaf falling wrong. But no, the world seems to be holding its breath, and in a place where every rhythm is tied to the river's voice. The silence is deafening. Historians still argue about this phenomenon. Some say it was the result of underwater shifts, earth tremors muffling flow through submerged caves. Others claim it was psychological, a cultural pause invented to force rest into an otherwise industrious society. But here in the village, everyone agrees on one thing. When the river falls silent, everything stops. Market is canceled. Meals are cold. Even conversations become spare, clipped. People move slowly, as if underwater themselves. You notice Kaba, the wind-listening boy, sitting cross-legged under a tree, eyes shut, hands resting on his knees like a monk. You ask what he's doing, waiting for her to remember. He explains that the river's voice sometimes disappears when too many people talk over her. She gets tired, he says with a shrug. We do that too. Right. You smile. but you also feel that strange disorientation, like when you check your phone for the time and the screen won't light up. By midday, the silence has changed from eerie to oppressive. Children try to skip stones, but the lack of reaction makes the game feel hollow. An old man tries singing to the river, but his voice fades before the second verse. Then Amma, the woman who once explained the flavors of salt and ash, walks to the bank and kneels. She cups her hand and scoops water to her lips, tastes, waits, her face changes. Today, she says quietly, is a listening day, not an ash day, not a salt day, not an ending day. Listening. And just like that, the mood shifts. No one nods. No one cheers, but there's agreement. The kind that ripples through bodies the way wind ripples across a still lake. Listening days are the rarest of all. They're not assigned by the drip clock, or the moon's reflection, or the whisper of reeds. They're felt when the river withdraws her voice, not out of anger, but out of invitation. You're supposed to listen not to her, but to everything else. To the trees, the birds, the creak of your neighbor's knees, the sound of your own thoughts, echoing louder than you thought possible. A listening day is when the kingdom takes a breath. When problems aren't solved, when schedules aren't followed, when even time shrinks a little, curling into itself like a sleeping cat. You're invited into a home quietly. No greetings, no shoes. A woman offers you tea without speaking. It smells like clove and wood smoke. You sip. She nods once. That's enough. Children play with stones. But instead of shouting and chasing, they stack them into little towers. Delicate ones. The kind that fall over if you even breathe too hard. Someone hands you a bowl of yam. No salt and no spice. Just soft and warm. It's one of the best meals you've ever had. Because silence, when chosen, is a kind of seasoning. That evening, just before the sun folds behind the horizon, the first sound returns. A plop. Soft. Uncertain. Then another. A swirl. And then, finally, the river breathes again. The surface stirs. Reeds sway. And a bird sings from across the bend, as if cued by a conductor. Mabani smiles. She's back. People don't cheer. They don't cry. They just nod like a teacher returning to class after a moment outside. And the lesson resumes. But you lie back in the grass, eyes wide, heart oddly full. You've learned something not easily forgotten. Time doesn't only tick. Sometimes it listens. Dawn breaks with an unexpected percussion croak. 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 3 deep, deliberate sounds from just beyond the tall reeds. You turn your head slowly, not yet fully awake, and there he is. Or rather, it is a fat, luminous green frog sits perched on a damp log like royalty on a throne. Its throat balloons, pulses, then contracts with a sound so loud, it almost feels timed. And perhaps it is. Around you, villagers begin to stir, not from the sun, not from the river, but from that frog. His name is not really a name, but a title. The Hour Frog, or sometimes, more affectionately, that grumpy little timekeeper. He croaks exactly 3 times at dawn, 2 at dusk, and according to those who keep track, exactly once at the start of the planting season. The frog isn't owned. He comes and goes, but when he does appear, people take notice, markets adjust, priests light candles. One elder even refuses to drink tea until the frog has announced the hour. You follow the sound, watching as the villagers file out from their huts, stretching and murmuring about the good timing of today's first croak. A woman in a blue shawl notes that he's early 2 drops before the sun's rise, she says, using the gourd drip terminology you've learned to appreciate. You crouch near the water's edge, careful not to cast your shadow too close. The frog is enormous, slick and ancient looking, as if it has seen 1,000 moons and only liked 4 of them. He croaks again low and sure, with the confidence of a thing that knows exactly what it's for. You whisper, "How does he know?" Kiba, appearing beside you like a leaf on the wind, says, "Because he listens better than all of us." Historians still argue whether the frog is a totem, a trained ritual animal, or simply an amphibious coincidence. One early ethnographer noted in his battered journal that the same frog had been documented over 3 decades by 3 separate scribes, each convinced it was the same frog, not a descendant. The same. Some say he lives in a hollowed rock near the old burial fields, where the river's current splits in two, and secrets go to wait. Others claim he disappears into mist during droughts, and only returns when the river misses him. Regardless of the truth, the people treat his appearance as more than folklore, its function. His croak often marks the start of key seasonal transitions: rainfall, yam sprouting, mango flowering. The frog's song is less a timepiece and more a weather oracle. A woman nearby is stirring a pot of maize. She listens to the last croak and announces, "Tax season begins. You do a double take." "Sorry, what?" She shrugs. The frog knows when the crops will grow. So the chiefs know when we can give. Turns out, this amphibian is somehow tied to the village's agricultural pulse. When he appears, it's the signal that the land is ready to feed and to be fed from. You watch a cluster of elders tally up sticks bound with twine, each representing a family's offerings, not gold, not coins, yams, firewood, shells, time translated into gifts. And the frog, he croaks once more, then hops off. His duty's done for the day. No dramatic exit, just to plop into the water and silence. You ask a nearby boy, "What if he doesn't come?" The boy shudders. Then we listen harder, or wait, or postpone everything. No frog, no taxes, no plans. A society structured not around mandates or laws, but the unpredictable loyalty of a river frog. You walk further down the riverbank, where a small stone shrine stands, half hidden in tall grass. Inside is a carving of the frog, etched into dark wood, with little shells pressed into its eyes. Beside it lie bowls of water, bunches of dried flies, and folded cloths with prayers scrawled in crooked charcoal lines. It's not worship, it's gratitude. The frog is not a god. He's a calendar page that sometimes decides not to turn. Later, you overhear a couple whispering about moving their wedding date because the frog's morning croaks had a tinge of sharpness. One croak, especially, sounded urgent. That can't be ignored. A child walks past, humming a song where each line ends in a croaking noise. You grin. Even their lullabies contain little echoes of the hour frog's voice. And you realize this isn't about frogs or prophecy. It's about permission. In this kingdom, time doesn't push, it waits. It's announced by sounds that can't be manufactured or controlled. And when that sound is a frog's measured call across the stillness of dawn, well, that's a clock you actually want to listen to. You sit again by the river, eyes closed, and imagine time not as a ticking thing, but as a croaking one, slow, ancient, and wise enough to only speak when it matters. Midday drapes itself lazily across the village like a hammock hung between the sun and the soil. The heat doesn't scald, it lingers, thick and velvety, encouraging slow movement and long thoughts. And as your sandals crunch along a well-trodden path that winds away from the riverbank, you begin to hear an entirely different rhythm. Click, tap, clack. It's not a drum, not footsteps. It's the sound of bones. You round the bend and find yourself at the entrance of what looks like a temple, or what's left of one. Its walls are half swallowed by moss and vines, its roof long gone, but inside, seated in a wide circle, are the keepers of one of the kingdom's strangest and most beautiful clocks, the calendar of fish bones. No, you didn't mishear that. You're about to learn time from skeletons at the center of the temple, spiraling outward across the worn stone floor. Are fish bones, hundreds of them, arranged meticulously into concentric circles like a seashell, made by an obsessive librarian. Tiny bones for short days. Long, elegant spines for moon cycles, each one placed by hand. You tiptoe closer and see names inscribed in faded ink along the bones, some in patterns, others alone. You recognize no alphabet, but the order is unmistakable, intentional, reverent. One of the keepers, a wiry man with a voice like gravel steeped in tea, invites you to sit. His name is Olo. He's been tending this calendar for 38 years. Ever since a dream told him the fish were tired of being eaten without thanks. You smile politely. He's not joking. Olo explains. Each day, One new fish bone is placed into the spiral, always moving clockwise, always on the same stone tile. No skips, no repeats. When the spiral completes after precisely 349 bones, the year resets. You blink. That's not 365. He nods. It's river time. Solar years don't matter to fish. Fair. Historians still debate whether this calendar predated contact with Arabic traders, whose lunar systems often clashed with agricultural needs. Some scholars believe the bone spiral was the kingdom's way of combining lunar, river, and seasonal tracking into one living document, fragile but irreplaceable. And yes, the bones are real. Catfish ribs, tilapia jaws, even rare eel vertebrae carved with glyphs too small to see without squinting. Every piece is washed, dried, blessed with a puff of cola nut smoke, then laid with a whisper. And what happens if they skip a day? They don't, Olo says with a grin. If someone's sick, another lays it. If it rains, we wait until the water speaks. But the bone must land before the next sunrise. You watch as a young girl enters the spiral, holding a single white shard, today's bone. She bows, mutters something under her breath, then walks the path inward, careful not to disturb the others. She finds the next empty space and places it, lightly, lovingly. Then she steps back. Everyone watches in silence. Then Olo claps once, sharp and loud, and the tension lifts. That's time for today, he says. You ask how they know what kind of day it is just by the bones. He raises a finger, curls it toward the spiral. Patterns, he says. When we look from above, we see clusters, sudden curves, echoes. The spiral tells us if the river is calm, angry, generous, or secretive. Apparently, some years the spiral curls tighter than expected. Those are lean years, ones marked by drought or failed harvests. Other times, the spiral loosens. Opens those years bring weddings, twins, and traveling musicians who stay longer than they should. Once, Olo says, a bone was laid out of order by mistake or mischief. No one knows. That year, they say, the river flowed backward for 3 breaths. Was it true? You ask. He shrugs. The elders say it happened, and the spiral believed them. You spend the rest of the afternoon among the bones, watching as sunlight filters through the ruined roof, turning the spiral into a glimmering fossil of memory. You wonder what it means to live in a place where time is rebuilt each day, bone, by hand and by trust, not by satellites, not by power grids, by fish. Before you leave, Olo presses a smooth, translucent vertebra into your palm. For travel, he says, so you don't forget what time feels like when it's not in a hurry. You clutch it tightly, and as you walk back toward the river, the spiral fades from view, but its rhythm stays with you. Click, tap, clack, time. As the fish understand it, night falls not like a curtain, but like someone slowly dimming the lanterns of the sky, one star at a time. You're walking the narrow path back to the river's edge, still clutching the fishbone Olo gave you. It's warm now, or maybe your hand has made it so. Ahead, faint glimmers dance in the air. Not fire, not torchlight, but something softer, bluer. You pause, then gasp. Fireflies, hundreds of them, but not the kind you know. These glow blue, not yellow, not white. A kind of twilight sapphire shimmer that seems almost intentional. They're on time, someone murmurs behind you. You turn to see Amma again, her shawl drawn around her shoulders, eyes lit by memory. She nods toward the trees. It's the hour of the blue fireflies. You squint into the dark and realize it's not random. The fireflies aren't scattered. They're forming a slow-moving spiral, a glowing map traced in the air, starting from the far bank and curling inward toward the heart of the village. This is no accident. You follow, entranced, the trail of light guiding your steps. Others follow too young, old, silent. No one speaks. The blue fireflies are not to be disturbed, because this hour is sacred. Historians still can't explain the phenomenon. Some claim the bioluminescence is a rare species responding to shifts in barometric pressure. Others suggest phosphorescent algae on the river's surface creates the illusion. But the villagers, they don't guess, they know. The fireflies appear once every few weeks, and always at the same moment, when the yams are ready, No digging, no testing the soil, just the lights. If the blue glow dances west, it's time to harvest. If it spirals east, they wait. A counterclockwise pattern means celebration. Clockwise means patience. And if the fireflies stay still, you pray. Tonight, they spiral east. Amma exhales slowly. A few more days, she whispers. You ask how they can be sure this isn't coincidence. She gestures toward a young man standing under a tall baobab, holding a clay flute. He hasn't played it yet. He's waiting. Every year, she says. He plays the firefly song, but only when they move west. You both wait, watching. The lights continue their lazy eastern spin. No music tonight. Instead, the villagers begin lighting baskets of incense. Soft coils of smoke rise into the air: basil, lemongrass, and dried fish scales, offerings to thank the fireflies for showing up. Even when they bring delay, children sit cross-legged, watching the glow, sometimes reaching out a finger only to pull it back quickly. You ask if they ever try to catch them. Amma looks shocked. You don't catch time, she says. You follow it. It's then you learn that weddings are sometimes postponed for weeks, just waiting for the fireflies to turn. Once, a chief waited 49 nights. His beard grew an extra finger length in that time, and the bride's family gifted him a second flute as consolation. And once, long ago, the fireflies never came. For a full season, the river glowed only with moonlight. The crops stalled. The sky held its breath. It wasn't famine, but it was unease. When they finally returned, fluttering in like blue embers carried on wind, the people wept. Not from hunger, but from relief. Time had remembered them. The blue fireflies aren't loud. They don't buzz. They don't sting. They simply float, signal, and disappear again like notes in a forgotten song. And yet, their presence is written into every important decision, from harvests to healing, from travel plans to lullabies. Tonight, the villagers begin to sing, not loudly, not in unison, but in gentle fragments that drift like mist. One voice near the water, another from behind the yam storehouse, a hum from the fire pit, a whistle near the trees. You realize this is their version of checking the time before bed, not by clocks, by firefly. And you lie back on the grass, eyes to the sky, and watch one tiny spark float above your head. It pauses, hovers, dips toward you once, then spirals away, and for a fleeting moment, you swear you feel it, time smiling. You wake before the sun, not because of a sound, but because of a feeling, a thrum in the air, a pulse. It travels through your back, where it meets the earth, humming up your spine like a low drumbeat calling something ancient to attention. The village is stirring, but not with voices. With rhythm, far off, deep and resonant, comes the sound of a drum boom. Boom, boom. It's not music. It's not performance. It's time. You sit up slowly. There's no singing, no dancing, just a series of perfectly timed strikes echoing across the village, each one carefully spaced, neither rushed nor delayed. The air between the beats is sacred. It's in those silences that the villagers feel the hour pass. You follow the sound, drawn like a moth to the source, and find a small hut built into the roots of a massive tree. Around it are 6 tall drums, each carved from hollowed wood and etched with winding lines like vines. They rest on stone bases that tilt ever so slightly toward the river. Inside the hut, a man sits cross-legged with his eyes closed, hands poised above the largest drum. His fingers twitch gently with each breath. His name is Dano. He's the village's dawn keeper. You sit quietly beside a child already there, who whispers. He doesn't sleep. He listens for morning. Apparently, Dano begins each day by drumming the hour out of the dark. But here's the twist. He doesn't strike the drum based on sight, or shadow, or songbirds. He plays when the trees tell him to. You raise your eyebrows, and the child shrugs. Each tree bends a little before dawn. Like it's yawning, he feels it through the roots. And somehow, you believe it. The dawn keeper doesn't use rhythm in the Western sense. There's no tempo, no meter. The beats are guided by intuition and the subtle movements of the banyan tree he drums beneath. Its roots spread deep into the soil, touching the river's bed itself. It's said the tree can hear the river's dreams and relay them through vibrations. Historians still can't agree whether this practice originated from percussion traditions of Bantu tribes or whether it evolved independently as a kind of living metronome. But the villagers don't split hairs. To them, it's just the drum that tells time. 1 beat for the sun clearing the horizon, 3 for the opening of the cooking fires, 5 for the time before speech when only birds may sing. You listen as the beats change. The pitch varies slightly, not from the drum, but from the way Dano's hands strike it. Flat, palm, fingers. The air vibrates gently with each one, sending tiny birds fluttering from the trees. A dog stretches. A kettle somewhere begins to boil. Time begins to walk. Later in the morning, children practice their own rhythms on smaller drums. Not to play songs, but to learn patterns of the day. They aren't graded. They're asked how it feels. Some of them tap a heartbeat. Thump, thump. Pause. Thump, thump. Others mimic the river. Soft, soft, soft. Silence. Soft, soft. You're told that before written calendars, these rhythms were memorized. One rhythm for planting, another for weaving, a complex series of taps for mourning. Even courtship had a beat played with sticks on hollow gourds. They didn't say "I like you," they tapped it. There's even a fabled rhythm called the one that waits. It's used when the village isn't sure what comes next, when someone's gone missing, or a decision must be made. No one leads it. Everyone listens. When the right beat appears, people simply know, and they follow. As the sun climbs higher, Dano finally opens his eyes and lifts his hands from the drum. No words, just quiet, and in that quiet, you feel full, like someone has served you a bowl of time and let you sip it slowly. You turn to leave, but Dano speaks one word behind you, deep, rich, and certain. 6. You blink. 6 what? Hours, he says, until the next shift. Listen for the woodpecker. Right. Woodpeckers here aren't just background noise. They mark intervals. When one calls 3 times, it's time to prepare for visitors. If it pecks once, wait. If twice, delay. And if silence follows a single peck, go. That's the rhythm of this place. Time is not strict. Time is not cruel. Time suggests. And you, lulled by drum beats and tree breath, realize how generous that can be. The sun begins to tilt westward, the light softening into that dreamy gold that turns everything into a memory before it's even finished happening. You're sitting beneath a breadfruit tree with a woven hat pulled low over your brow, lazily watching ants construct a road over a crooked stick. Then someone walks past you fast, too fast. A second, then a third. It's subtle at first, but soon you notice it. Something's different. The pace of the village has shifted. No more slow saunters, no more meandering. People are moving with quiet urgency, eyes darting, voices clipped. What's going on? You ask a teen balancing a bundle of firewood. He doesn't slow down. Time's been banned. Wait, what, you stand... What do you mean banned? He stops, turns, and says flatly, "The king declared a year without time. Started this morning, then he walks off, leaving your jaw on the ground. You chase down Amma, who is uncharacteristically hurrying to fold blankets off her mat." She sighs. "It's true. We've had this before. Once, long ago. It's rare. It's uncomfortable. But it's allowed. You blink. A ban on time. How does that even work?" She doesn't smile. "You'll see. And oh, do you, in the span of an hour, or at least what you think is an hour, every form of timekeeping is hidden. The moss drip bowl is turned upside down. The river reeds are cut at the base. The fishbone spiral is covered in woven cloth." Mabani stops singing. Keba is told to stop listening to the wind. Even the frog, he is mysteriously absent. No more whispers. No more croaks. No more rhythm. The people stop marking anything. You ask around. Some remember it happening in their childhood. Others only know stories. It was always the decision of the king not to punish, but to reset, to remind the kingdom what life feels like when it isn't measured. You wonder aloud, what happens to market, meals, weddings? A young woman carrying a calabash shrugs. "We do them when it feels right." And she means it. By mid-afternoon again, You're guessing there's no routine, no calling of hours. Fires are lit at odd times. Songs start and stop without conclusion. People nap standing up. Conversations trail off and don't return. And the strangest part, no one panics, but everyone seems slightly lost, like they're walking without a map, recognizing trees but forgetting where they're going. A child tries to play the dawn drum. He's gently stopped. A merchant tries to lay a fishbone. Her hand is held in silence. A man brings his yams to the river to see if the fireflies will appear early, but he's told, kindly, to take them home. Even the river seems confused. Its current picks up, then slows, then reverses for a blink, as if it, too, is looking for something to sync with. Historians speculate this might have been the kingdom's way of resetting power structures. A pause on rituals could prevent decisions from being made too hastily. Or perhaps it was spiritual, a communal fast from the addiction of control. But here, among the people, the feeling is simpler. Disorientation. There's no punishment, no reward, just absence, a removal of scaffolding. You realize how much of this place depends not just on tradition, but on agreement, an unspoken, collective trust in the structures they've built with water, wind, light, and rhythm. Without it, everything's floaty, untethered, like trying to walk across a bridge that's been made invisible. You try to cook, but nothing feels ready. You try to nap, but don't know when to wake. A girl laughs at your frustration. You see, time is heavy. When we take it off, we wobble, but not forever. Near what feels like twilight, something changes. A light hum begins under the breath of the village. A bowl is filled. A drum is tapped, not played, just acknowledged. Mabani steps out from her hut and nods once toward the river. Just like that, the band lifts. No announcement, no ceremony. Time simply returns, quietly, like a friend who's forgiven you. That night, the villagers gather by the water not to mark the hour, but to tell stories about the day it vanished. One man confesses he forgot how to blink on time. A woman says she started a stew, got distracted, and created a new dish entirely. A child claims the river talked louder during the silence. And you sit beneath the mango tree and stare at the sky and wonder what parts of your life only exist because a clock told you so, and what might rise from the silence if the ticking ever stopped. It's the next morning, or at least, it feels like it is. The river is back to its whispering self. The wind is lazily combing through the tall grasses, and villagers are walking with that familiar, unhurried grace again balanced between purpose and peace. You sit beneath a shade tree beside Keba, who is showing a toddler how to listen for the breeze by holding a dried banana leaf just above the eyebrow. That way, he whispers. You don't squint. Squinting makes you impatient. You smile. You're starting to get it. But even with everything returning to normal, the drip bowl's back in place, the fireflies rumored to have been spotted again, and the drums slowly testing their voice, something still feels different. There's a heaviness in the way the elders speak today, something they're not saying. It isn't long before you find out why. Amma is sitting alone, hunched near the river, rubbing her thumb along the smooth curve of a half-buried stone, the kind used for marking river time. You recognize, but this one has been chipped, its spiral barely visible now, faded like a word almost forgotten. You join her, but say nothing. After a while, she speaks. There was a time, she says slowly, when the river forgot us. You blink, forgot. She nods, eyes on the water. Stopped speaking, stopped showing the stones. No frogs, no wind patterns, no fireflies. For months. You listen closely. Her voice is quiet, but steady. People thought it was drought, or sickness, or anger from the ancestors. But we knew it was us. We'd stopped listening. She tells you the story of that year long before you arrived, when the rhythms began to fade. People grew impatient. They guessed at times, forced ceremonies, skipped the listening days. Traders demanded consistency. Children were rushed. Drums were played just for show. And so, she says, the river fell silent. Not out of cruelty, but because we drowned her out. The silence lasted 3 full seasons. Crops suffered not from climate, but from timing. Weddings turned sour. Children were born on the wrong spirals. Even the fish disappeared from their usual rhythms. You can't harvest a yam that hasn't been whispered to. Amma mutters, half to herself. Historians, of course, cite external factors, shifts in climate, new trade pressures, regional conflict. But in the kingdom's oral memory, this was not a crisis of resource. It was a crisis of relationship. The elders called it the forgetting. You feel the words settle over you like a soft, wet cloth, heavy, cooling. The people forgot how to listen, she says, and the river forgot how to speak. So what happened? The youngest remembered. Amma says with a slow smile. They listened, not with their ears, with their feet, with their games, with their questions. You imagine it, children playing near the water's edge, not to mark time, but to simply be in it. Small hands touching stones, laughter matching breeze, and little by little, the river returned. First the reeds whispered, then the frogs, then came one lonely firefly, blinking in a hesitant spiral. It was enough. The spiral of fish bones was restarted. The gourd was filled again. The lullabies were relearned, a rhythm rebuilt from silence, one soft echo at a time. You walk through the village now with a fresh lens. Everything feels precious, not just because of beauty, but because of its fragility. A boy tosses pebbles into a clay bowl, waiting for the water to reply with ripples. An old man hums into a seashell held to his ear. A woman fans incense over a stone before she cooks. You ask one villager, "Why do you still do these things, even when they don't always work?" She laughs gently. Because time is like a friend. If you only talk when you need something, they stop answering. That evening, you see a group of children gathered at the riverbank, with tiny sticks arranged into a spiral. They each take turns placing one, whispering a word or phrase, some secret, some silly, all sincere. "What are they doing?" you ask. Amma answers from behind you, teaching the river their names. You watch the water, it ripples back, a quiet reply, and that's when you understand something vital. Time isn't just kept, it's earned, not by control, but by conversation, not by dominance, but by listening with humility. The people here don't command time, they court it, patiently, like a wild creature returning to the hand of someone who's finally learned to be still. And you sit on the damp ground, press your palm to the earth, and feel something faint. Not a vibration, not a breeze, just a whisper. The river remembers, because the people remembered first. Tonight, the river is lit from below, not with torches, not with lanterns, but with soft, golden bowls, shallow dishes carved from polished gourd, each one floating gently downstream, carrying a flickering flame and a single offering, a flower, a leaf, a word etched in charcoal on a folded scrap of cloth. They call them reminders. You sit on the bank alongside villagers of every age, each one holding a bowl of their own. Even Mabani is here, her shoulders cloaked in woven blue, her fingers gently tracing the rim of her flame-bearing gourd. This is how they end the cycle, every few months, after all the timekeeping rituals have turned, when the spiral of bones has curled in on itself. The river is reminded of the people, their hopes, their errors, and their willingness to listen again. You watch as Keba lets his bowl go first. It carries a tiny river stone with a streak of red clay across its surface. The flame dances quietly, casting shadows along his cheeks. "What did you give it?" You whisper. "My apology," he says. "For what?" "For rushing the wind last week." And he's serious. Each bowl is a conversation brief, unspoken, real. Some float silently, others drift toward shore, refused. A few spin in gentle circles before finding their path. The villagers watch each one with reverence, never correcting, never guiding. Time, here, ends softly. Historians would struggle to explain this. There are no metrics, no charts, no logs or tallies, but the people don't need proof. They need closure, and so, each flame that drifts downriver is a gentle punctuation mark on another passage of life. You prepare your bowl. You're handed a tiny shard of fishbone, smooth, white, light as air. You tuck it into the center and hesitate. What do I say to time? You ask Amma beside you. Whatever you're ready to leave behind. You place the bowl on the water. It floats steadily, not too fast, not too slow. The flame holds. Around you, other bowls drift like stars on a mirrored sky, bobbing gently, leaving trails of warmth and memory. You can hear the river whispering again, no longer muttering, no longer silent, just present. Somewhere behind you, a drum sounds, just once, a rhythm of closure, one beat, and nothing more. Children gather reeds, the elders hum. Someone begins to sweep the path without being asked, and in the distance, the first frogs resume their evening song, measured, familiar, almost like a clock striking. You realize, time here doesn't end like yours does with an alarm, a deadline, a jarring jolt back into motion. It ends with breath, with release, and with just enough silence between the moments to hear something you missed. As the last bowl disappears around the bend of the river, you lie back in the grass, hand pressed to your chest. No phones, no watches, no ticking, only time that murmurs back when you remember to ask it kindly. And now, as your breath softens and the weight of your day begins to drift downstream, let yourself rest in the memory of the river. There's no schedule here, no race to run, just the gentle rhythm of things happening exactly when they need to, no sooner, no later. Let your thoughts slow to the pace of the spiral. Let your shoulders settle like the moss in the gourd. Let your heartbeat echo the distant drum that plays only once. Even now, the blue fireflies might be spiraling across the sky of your dreams, drawing soft, glowing lines that don't need to be understood, only followed. You don't need to check the time. You are in the time, floating, like a bowl on still water, safe, still, known. The river remembers you, and it's in no rush, so go ahead, sink into sleep. No whispers to chase, no hours to hold, just the soft hush of something ancient saying, "You're right on time. Good night."